with your business credit, and I want to make sure that you understand like why is this so important to latch onto, because it's such a powerful opener. It opens things up completely to, your basically your future. And this is what funding my future is about. Is I'm keeping a vision of what I have, what I have going, like what I want to go after, and then I'm just using the fuel to be able to support that, right? And this is the fuel. That's what I want to share with you tonight. How can you access 50K, 80K, 100K, 120K, 150K in 0% interest business credit in the next 30 to 45 days? This is why this is so powerful, and it's something that everybody can do. It's a formula, and once you put the formula together, then you can access it, right? So I want you to know about it, and this is why I come on here to be able to share this information, because it's very powerful, especially when used in the right way, in the right hands. And I am Kyle Alexander, and I've been in this entrepreneurial space since about 2021, for about the past 4 years, and I have been doing business and real estate and coaching and things like that. And throughout this journey, I learned about business credit, because I never even knew that it existed. And when I found out about it, I said, well, let me dig into this a little bit. And before I knew it, once I started, by the time I was done, between my wife and myself, we got over $500,000 in business credit that we could leverage towards, real estate, towards investments, towards mentorship groups. And I've gotten into so many different rooms, just so many different situations and access to people that I never thought. And it's just opened up so much. And that's why I want you to be able to know about it, because I do care significantly about you pushing your life forward, and I want to hand people the tools that can that can help them to move forward as quickly as possible. So you don't have to necessarily wait. The funding is out there, right? The resources are out there, and if you have the skill and the will and the desire to push through, then the money is not the problem, right? So that's what I'm here to share with you tonight, is that the money is not the problem. There's multiple reasons, multiple ways you can leverage other people's money, but I want to talk about this particular strategy because it is a formula. Once you put the formula together, you can access 50K, 100K, 150K. Oz, what's going on? Good evening. 150K at 0% interest in the next 30 to 45 days, right? So this is really really critical, and I want to share the exact blueprint with you. Again, I've paid a lot of money for this information, and I want you to be able to access as much as you can. So what's going on, Sophia? I want you to be able to access as much as you can, right? So please ask any questions. For those of you that have been on with me, you've heard a lot of information. If you need some more questions, you have something else that's blocking you. What's going on, Sophia? Good evening. Thank you. Thanks for joining in again. If you have more questions, and thanks for the gift. Oh, Sophia. You're killing it. You're killing it. Thank you. I really appreciate it. And again, please share this live with somebody, and hit the like button. Share your gifts. Like, all that is going to help for this information to get to more people. And again, I do appreciate it, but I do encourage you to please put your questions in the chat, right? This is why I'm here, to be able to help you to answer, real and live and in person, to be able to answer your questions, and also want to be able to inspire you to say, okay, well, what are some things maybe that I haven't thought about when it comes to business credit, and how that can open things up, because ultimately we're talking about your future. You know what I mean? We're talking about your life. We're talking about your dream. And whether that's a dream to put something into the world, whether that's a dream to be in a certain state with your family, a certain level of freedom. Like, this is your dream, and the what I'm saying is, when you leverage these strategies, you can access the funding to be able to support the dream, right? And support it in a major way that can fast track things. And I talk a lot about, leveraging. One of the most important things that you can leverage is mentorship, right? And coaching, and the right programs to be able to push you forward quickly, because what it does is you're basically extracting someone else's mistakes, right? You're extracting someone else's successes and the process and what it is that they did to be able to push forward. And that's one of the best ways to do it. Again, if you find the right one, it's not always going to be 100%, that you find the exact person, things like that. However, if you vet it properly and you say, hey, this person has what I want, their students are successful, they're doing the drop shipping, or they're doing the fulfilled by Amazon, or they're doing the trucking, or they're doing the real estate, or they're doing the Airbnb, and they've got all this stuff going, and I want to be able to access that, right? And this can open up the access at the highest level, right? Because if I'm telling you that I can, in the next 30 to 40 days, we could get you access to 100K, to 150K, to 80K. What that means is that opens up the door for for pretty much any mentorship that you can think of, because you can access pretty much anyone in the world, high level people that execute business, regularly, anyone in the world, for between about $3,000 up to $50,000, right? And for a lot of these programs, if you are um paying for the inner circle, or the highest tier, where it's like you have direct access to them and things like that, and a lot of times, like a case in point, one of the mentorships that I'm in, so they have a inner circle where, hey, this is $25,000, but the reason it's $25,000 is because I'm going to show you the exact steps to be able to make $25,000 a month, or $100,000 in a day, right? Using these different digital strategies and things like that. So if the investment is that, and then the return is that, as long as you put in the work, then that's up. But the only problem is, how many of us have 25,000 sitting around to be able to leverage towards that? Or if we did have it in our personal credit, you're going to be tanking your personal credit, at least in the meantime, while you do that. So this is why business credit can be so powerful, is because you can you can leverage this information to be able to get into that sort of thing quickly, right? Because how long is it going to take you to save up $100,000? How long will it take you to save up 120,000, right? 80,000 even. So this is a strategy that you can use, to be able to get into things quickly. And as I say, I have no gatekeep in me, and I want you to have as much information as possible, almost to a fault sometimes, where I'm just sharing information, right? So, but what the reason I want you to have it is because this is not the only strategy in town to be able to get funding for your business. However, this is one of the fastest and the one with the most results that I know of. Because if we're saying, if you have this formula together, then you can move forward to be able to get 100K in the next 30 days, right? In the next, 40 days, 120K, 150K. If you leverage the strategy like I did, with using multiple LLCs, and with myself and my wife, and targeting it that way, and we were able to, that now those numbers double up and triple up, where we got 300K, now we got 400K, 500K, to be able to put towards business and all sorts of things, right? So this is a and thank you, Sophia, for sharing the live. I definitely appreciate it. Please share this, because like I said, I have have paid a good amount of money for this information. I want you to have it, and other people deserve to have it as well. So that's the best thing that you could do, is just hit like and hit share, right? But what I was saying is this is a very powerful strategy, because once you have it, you can access a large amount of funding very quickly. And here's the other thing that opens up the doors completely, is that you do not have to have a certain amount of years in business. You do not have to prove a certain amount of revenue. You don't have to have tax returns, you know what I mean, or bank statements and things like that. These are no document programs, where you can get access to this level of funding that you could use pretty much right away, even if you're just starting, right? So this works across the board, where it's like, hey, I'm just starting out, or I've been in it for a while, and I've been in business for a while, and maybe I've just been leveraging my personal credit, too much, or my personal savings, and I just haven't really gotten into business credit. There's just a few things that you needed to do to be able to tweak to set yourself up for that. So this is what I want to go into tonight, is what's the exact blueprint, and I want to answer your questions in between, right? Because a lot of people have questions about, is this right for me, or can it work in this scenario, or does this apply to this, or what about this version of like business credit that I heard about this online? Is this true? I will answer all of that to the best of my ability tonight. So I want you to, if you're tapped in here, I want you to tell me where you coming in from, where are you tuning in from tonight, and And also, if you can, tell me like what is your either your business or your interest? Like, is it real estate? Are you doing like physical products? You want to do digital products? Are you into trucking or whatever that might be? So let me know, where you're at, so I know who we have in here, and hopefully I can be able to answer your question. If you want to talk about your situation specifically, what I mean, ask away. I'm sure those questions will help the larger community, which is ultimately what I want, right? So I'm going to dive into the information. And again, if I see a question pop up, or if you have a question that pops up in your mind, then please reach out. Uh, Da Jackson, what's up? Good evening. Well, good to see you again. And please message me. I sent you a message, so check your messages, right? But I'm going to go into the information again, and please ask your questions in the chat. And the one thing that I tell everybody to always do is to make sure you take advantage of these free consultation calls that we are giving, because it's going to take a look at your current situation, your exact setup, and say, okay, what's the next thing that you need to be able to move forward, right? What's the exact next step that's going to position you for this type of funding, and also position you for any other type of funding, right? Now, I said I do talk about the 0% interest business credit stacking method and approach a lot on these lives. But the other thing is that I want to make sure that you know that this is also, our team is able to help with business funding like across the board, pretty much any type. And this is if you need a term loan, if you need a business line of credit, if you need like an automobile, if you need equipment financing, if you need an SBA loan, right? So we can connect with different resources, and all those other options are typically if you've been in business for a while and you've got a certain track record, you've got income, you've got the different things like that, then you can take a basically take a look at we'll take a look at that scenario and be able to advise you directly on that, right? But if you are just starting out, again, this is one of the most powerful ways to and Dia Jackson, thank you for sharing. Definitely appreciate that, and appreciate the gift. Again, that definitely does help to get this information like out to as many people as possible. And I thank you guys for tapping in. I know you guys have been tapping in multiple times and just pouring into yourself with this information, establishing it. And I hope this is continuing to be helpful for you, right? So, but yeah, so I'm gonna dive into the information again. Put your questions in the chat, whatever it is that you want, and before I start again, I do have to share. Again, this is a personal thing, but I am really starting this business on a foundation of giving. This is like in this season of my life, I feel like it's really important. So I have committed to donate and reinvest a portion of my profits into a fund that's going to be helping young entrepreneurs, young people to get into business, into real estate, into wealth creation, and just that whole mindset, financial literacy, to move things forward. So any purchase or anything that happens is it's going to be supporting that. And I love like win-win-win situations where everybody can grow together. That's just what I care about a lot. And ultimately, I want you to be able to get to the place where you have freedom to do, like, to live your God-given purpose, like whatever that is, and whether that's in the form of business, or like something that that you want to create or do, or just like how you're operating in the world. And that freedom is the first basis point for that. You know what I mean? Like when we don't have that freedom, we're oftentimes very restricted from being able to live our purpose and being able to shine in the way that I believe God wants us to shine. So this is kind of the whole purpose for this, is this strategy and approach is saying, okay, if I have this desire for freedom, one of the fastest ways to get there is to be able to execute business at a level that is high and proven. And one of the best ways to do that is to use someone else's framework. And again, like, mentorship is one of the best things that I can say. And once you do have those things in place, the other things, the best ways that I think you can leverage it is, again, for things like systems, like business systems, AI, for advertisements is huge, to be able to get people into your world, and for help, right, in the form of employees or even virtual assistants, or you can get people to work for you for 40 hours a week, for $1,000 a month or $1,200 a month. And that can totally change the game And it's a different decision when you've got, 100K or 120K or 150K to pull from. And you can just designate a certain amount of that towards that purpose, and then just kind of keep moving in that direction. So again, this is a really, really powerful. So I do want you to pay attention to this and know that this is possible for you, right? And I am going to get into this like right now, because again, this works for you like wherever you are, right? And this means either your credit is positioned where you can take advantage of this yourself, right? Or you're going to learn the information tonight about what exactly is needed, or you're going to be reminded of it at least, like what exactly is needed to be set up for this on the personal credit profile as well as the entity structure, right? What do I need for those? Once you know those, you can actually leverage someone else. You can leverage what's called a credit partner that has these factors that I'm about to go over, right? They have these factors, and you are the one that's going to be executing the business, right? And oh, JC, thank you for joining the fan club and for the gift. Definitely appreciate that. Much love for that. And like I said, this helps this information to be able to get out to a lot more people. So thank you so much. So let's dive into it, right? But when we talked about the credit partner, where that opens things up considerably, right? Considerably, because your credit right now might not be in a position for you to be able to leverage, this exact strategy for yourself right this second, right? What I can tell you is if you start today, then you could be 30 days away if you're like one or two tweaks, right? If you are you could be 90 days away if there's some changes that we need in your credit or some credit repair things. You could be a year away if you are starting from total scratch and you need to build up your credit for the first time and let some cards season and things like that. And I think it's always worth it to just start right away to build that up, right? But on the other side of it is while you build that up, to set yourself up for the future, you can be operating now in it by being able to leverage a credit partner, someone that has the credit, and then you have the business as far as like what's going to be done, like what am I going to do to make this new income, and you can combine that, and that's something that you can operate on, execute on like right now. So that means in the next 30 days, if you identified who that partner might be, in the next 30 days, you could be again having access to 120,000, 80,000. My one of my clients that came through recently, from got the a call booked for the team. 22 days later, she had 90,000, 90 to 95,000 that she could use for her real estate business, right? JPS, happy Thanksgiving. Yes, yes. We are on the eve. We are on the eve of Thanksgiving. I guess depending on where you are in the world, it may have already started, but yeah, happy Thanksgiving. And this is a great time period to just appreciate, pause and appreciate, right? And have gratitude for even for just being here, right? And I will say, I haven't shared too much about my personal story, but part of the reason that I am so passionate about pushing hard towards freedom, is because I got the call that nobody wants to get, a couple years ago. It was in the middle of the night, it was like 2:33 in the morning, and I see it's my mom, and I picked up the phone, and it was like, oof, it was like the worst tone that you ever want to hear. And I found out that my dad had passed. Like it was like very, very sudden, and he had a heart attack, and there was like he didn't have any health issues before that, and it just kind of popped up out of nowhere. This was almost like 2 years ago now, almost three, so it feels like it was yesterday, so that's one of the reasons, like those types of things that a lot of us have dealt with in different ways, but it's just that reminder that tomorrow is not promised. The conditions, that this is not always just like death and things like that, but the conditions of today are not promised tomorrow. And this is even as simple as the banks that we can connect with. Sometimes the banks might change their policies or things like that. You might have to start helping out, something with your family, and or do some additional things. Again, thank God we're about to have God willing, we're about to have a baby, in January. So that's going to change a lot of things. So there might be certain things I was able to do before that I'm not. So it's like taking action today and just really taking advantage of things is like really, really important. JPS says lost yours 30 years ago, and you was the one to find him. Oh man. Yeah, that's tough. That's tough. And again, this is all the reason I think it's those reminders, right, that tell me at least why I need to push, why I need to push for this, right? Why I need to identify what kind of life do I want to live, right? And how do I want to live it? And how am I pushing towards this? And this is why I say this business credit is one of the ways to be able to fast track whatever that is, because you don't have to wait. Because a lot of people, they wait for a long time because it's like, I don't have, if it's real estate, like I don't have $20,000, $50,000 for a down payment for my investment property. You know what I mean? Or even to be able to get into this mentorship, or whatever the case. And it's just having access to capital just changes so much, and it changes your mindset when you have it versus like when you don't. Um, you said kids are the best, and this is why I need to reset now so bad. Yep. Yeah, yeah. I feel that 100%. And I'm definitely with you. And this is why, like I said, I want to share this information with you so that you are in position to take advantage of it, or in position to share it with somebody else, which is why I say share the live. You know what I mean? Hit the like button. If you can give a gift, that helps too. But this information is really important and powerful for people to know about. And I think all of the ways that you can leverage, funding and other people's money, OPM for your business and to push your life forward. I think all those ways should be explored. And like I said, there's a lot of different ones. But like I said, this one is extremely powerful just because of the red tape that is not there. Once you have this formula in place, and because of the size of what you can get access to, and if you leverage it properly, again, this is at 0% interest for 12 to 18 months, sometimes 9 months with a few banks. But if you can do that, now we're saying we're using other people's money, but also at 0% interest. And if we leverage it right, then that it can totally change the game, right? So I sorry for that little rant and personal story and stuff like that. But I do want to make sure it's clear, like, well, this is why I'm here. You know what I mean? This is why, I have things to do, and might be physically tired and stuff, and dealing with my daughter waking up at night and whatnot. But I think the reason that I'm here and going live and sharing this information is because I believe it's so important for you to know, for you to leverage, and for you to share again with other people, so that they can know it too, because a lot of us just didn't, just weren't aware. Like I said, for like 5 years ago, had no idea like what business credit was or anything like that. And I didn't know. I had a pretty good credit score and profile, and I had no idea that I could access that much, you know and until I learned about it and started digging into it, and there were people that poured into me, so that I could understand the ins and outs of it. Like I said, I paid as a client. What's up, Detro? Good evening. And thanks for the gift, as always. I paid as a client, different companies, and I also worked as a worked in different mentorships and things like that as a mentee, just to understand it. And it's like I have to dig into this because this was like too crazy, too accessible, And thank you, Detro, the donut. Yes, yes, I appreciate that. Appreciate the gift. Ambitionpreneur says, I look familiar. Am I from Ohio? You asked me that last time, and the last time I think you hopped off before I answered it. But no, I am not from Ohio. But yes, I do get that all the time that I look like somebody. So I feel like maybe I'm just like a clone or something. And I got the night Detro, man, you're killing it. You're killing it with the donut with the night star. I really appreciate it. But the yeah, I think maybe I'm a clone or something, because I swear it's somebody in every state. I was like, oh, you look like somebody I know. Like, do you? I was like, nope, I'm from California. I spent time in Alabama in college, and now I'm in Maryland. Right, so those are my three spots. So if you didn't see me there, maybe you saw me around somewhere else, or I got a couple twins running around. So we'll see. Maybe there's some sci-fi backstory behind that somewhere. Um, but yeah. So again, please share this. Um, and maybe I have a familiar energy. It could be that. It could be that too. Who knows? So Detroit, you said I definitely look familiar. So yeah. So let's dive into it. Again, this might be a refresher for some people, but you can't hear it. You can't hear it enough times, right? And a lot of these concepts, like I said, it's a formula. Once you know the formula, you should be able to just spit it off the top of your head. Like, what are these requirements? We're going to talk about some of these nuances, right? And how we can leverage this to get into all sorts of things, right? So Martin Santos says, you write life insurance and work for yourself. How can I get a loan through your business? Right. So, yep. And Earth Doula, yeah, no problem. And thank you so much for the gift. Definitely appreciate that. Like I said, that helps a lot. So Martin Santos. So you say right, life insurance. So I actually am licensed as a life insurance agent as well. I haven't talked about that much. But that's a critical that's a critical one, right? But let's talk about your question is how can you get a loan through your business? We're going to talk about that right now, because when you say getting a loan, you can get a loan depending on what you want to use it for, right? There's lots of different loan products. Our team can help you with that as well. And again, if you haven't, you need to make sure you book a free consultation at fundingmyfuture.net, right? Get a free consult so you can look at either your credit, you know what I mean, or you're going to look at your funding opportunities, right? But the short answer, Martin, is that you need to um, basically you can also leverage this 0% business credit stacking to be able to leverage for your business and do all sorts of things. So again, this is not a loan. We're stacking multiple credit card products on the business side that do not show up on our personal side, right? They don't show up on personal credit, and we can use those for whatever purpose that we want. Either you're paying for things directly with these cards, or you are able to liquidate from the cards into cash to use for certain purposes, right? So that's the first thing that I would say, and I would suggest Martin to get in touch with the team at fundingmyfuture.net. Get in touch with the team so that you can get your next step laid out, right? But this is why this is like super powerful. Like I said, because even the concept of getting a loan, it is through your business, but this is like it's a different approach because now we're talking about 0% interest, right? For that period of time, and if you use that strategically, that can be really really powerful, right? So again, if you do need a loan, we can help you with that, but there might be some other approaches that you can leverage as well, depending on what you're going to use it for, right? So, and speaking of life insurance, just just because we're here, and so every night it seems like somebody asks a question that puts in a different direction, right? So I'm just going to share something. I'm just going to share something just for those of us that are here, tapped in. So please pay attention, right? So um, if you're not familiar, right? Let me know if you guys are familiar with infinite banking, right? Put a one in the chat if you have heard of or I'm familiar with infinite banking before. So I'm going to see like who's tapped in and what we're looking at, right? So infinite banking is where you can leverage life insurance to be able to basically loan to yourself for different purposes. It could be personal, like people will buy cars, and from their infinite banking policy, and basically the interest is going back to themselves. It's like it's a high leverage type of situation. Or you can use it for investment, and once you build up the cash value and things like that, and there's so many advantages you can have from leveraging it like a life insurance policy. There's different strategies to use, but getting into those, depending on what your income is and things like that, you have to have a certain amount to be able to put into it in order to leverage it properly. And there's a lot of nuances. You want to make sure you're working with the right people. If you do want to know about that, then please message me, because I'm tapped in with some people who can help set that up. And again, it is the one thing that also, there's ways to leverage it now and not necessarily have to have the death benefit be the main thing or the only reason that you would get into it, right? But there are also ways to leverage the value of that, now, whereas like they have these living benefits and things like that, where like if you get sick, terminally ill, or you can access that death benefit early so that you don't have to like tank everybody's savings account, if something happens, so and you're still alive, but you can't really take care of yourself and things like that. So that life insurance can cover that immediately. However, the other thing is just having it's like automatically creates generational wealth, like automatically. Because if you have it and you maintain it, that means that if you set it up right, your trust or your heirs like is going to inherit this amount that you can use to invest, to funnel, and you can have instructions as far as like how these things are going to be used and stuff like that, right? So it's like it's a whole thing that is definitely worth looking into. We can talk about that more. We can talk about that more. However, there is a way to be able to actually leverage business credit to get into these policies, right? To where if you have the strategy where you're going to be making money on whatever funds that you get, you technically could put those funds into, like, liquidate them and put them into a life insurance policy first, and then borrow from the life insurance policy to do your business. And then once you make the profit, then pay it all, everything all back off. And now you've got a policy worth, 200,000, 500,000, $1 million, that you can just have, pretty much permanently for your family, and all while leveraging the bank's money, like leveraging other people's money, right? So that's a whole another approach. Again, there's so many uses for this. Another way that this can be extremely powerful. But I did want to just share that briefly, just as a mind opener. So you guys, let me know if that is something that you've heard of before or you have considered. And I assume the people that didn't put one in the chat, put a two in the chat. If this is the first time that you're even hearing about infinite banking or like really considering life insurance, right? So let me know that too. But so let's dive into the information. Like I said, put your questions in the chat, any new questions that you have, but let's just run through the blueprint. Like, what exactly do you need? And we'll talk about some other nuances of how to use it. If you want some direct help with your situation or got some direct questions about you, we can talk about it now. You know what I mean? So this is the time that's opened up for you to be able to do that. But let's go through, right? So number one, this is based on the same foundation. There's two pillars of this foundation that make this all work, right? Number one is your personal credit profile needs to be a certain way that the banks are going to latch onto, right? Number two is your business entity needs to be positioned and structured in the right way, so that it looks like it's going to be around for a while. It looks legitimate, and it's legitimate means safe in the eyes of the banks. And when they feel safe, their pockets get loose, and that's where you're up, right? So let's talk through this, right? So we talk about, a lot of people ask about, okay, what credit score do I need to be able to get access to funding? And that is it's an easy way to kind of start the process and say, okay, well, my credit score is going to be the one determining factor, but that's not always the case, right? And um, the main thing is that you want to make sure that your credit profile is a certain way and not just a credit score, right? So because your score could be high, could be a 700, 750, and your profile at the same time could be not robust enough, or you don't have enough in there to be able to actually get access to funding, right? So what needs to be in that profile? Let's go through it, right? So number one is you need to have a certain number of credit cards in your name that you have access to at a certain limit, right? So this is at least two cards that have a $3,000 limit or higher, right? Ideally, it's 10,000 or more, right? And then the other thing is you want to write down is your business, your personal credit limits overall need to be at least 30,000 up to 100,000, right? So that's going to put you in the sweet spot. But at the bare minimum, if you have two credit cards that are 3,000 or higher, then you're good, right? To at least squeeze in the door. There might be some lower limits and things like that, but you can get access to it. And if you are below that, then now it's time to start, working up. So that could mean start your credit limit increases on your existing cards, or that could mean I need to find some credit cards that I can apply for that have high limits, right? And that, depending on what your credit is, there might be certain credit unions that you can leverage that have high limits, or certain banks that you can get into that are traditionally will be more lenient with the limit. And the reason that you want a high limit is because what they approve on the business side is going to be a reflection of what's on your personal side, right? As far as the amounts, because they want to compare to what you have. And the business side usually has some type of multiplier on it that's compared to your personal, right? So If you have 10,000, then sometimes that might be a $20,000 card on the business side. If you have a $5,000 card, that could be a 15,000, or 25,000 on the business side. So the higher, the better when it comes to like each individual limit. And then your overall limits need to be in that space, right? So that's the first thing. If you need to build up your profile again, I would suggest that you book a call with the team, a free consultation call, so that you can get things mapped out, because we do help people to get lined up for what do you need to have in your profile for funding, because again, credit repair is one thing where people will take things out of your credit report, or sometimes just delete accounts from your report or sweep things off your report. That's one thing, but it's another thing to know what needs to go into your report when it's all said and done. And this is what we're helping people with, is that additional step, because we know exactly what the banks are looking for funding. And if you're missing any pieces, then we can start to add those in and make sure when it's time to start the applications and things like that, you're going to have the best chance to have the maximum limits, right? Now, what are the maximum limits? When we talk about that, is the maximum limits are your the difference between, and I've seen this in real time, the difference between an approval of 8,000 or 12,000 on a business credit card, right? Which is a lot, which is a good amount. But at the same bank, a client that I worked with, we got 50,000 on the same card, the same bank, when someone else got 9,000 or 12,000, right? So that the difference can be pretty significant depending on who you choose to work with and things like that, or how you decide to go about it. But this foundation is going to set you up the best possible, right? So let's keep going. So that those credit cards, that's bullet point number one. Number two is your utilization, right? Needs to be at a certain point, right? So ideally, it's under 30% utilization, and this is each individual card that you have, as well as your overall credit limits utilization, right? Needs to be at 30% or lower. Now, this is not having to do with your loans, your mortgages, student loans, and things like that. As far as like the balance, we're talking about credit cards, revolving credit card debt. And this is something that a lot of people miss. And I'm going to go through the rest of these bullet points. And if the utilization is the only thing holding you back, then there are things you can do. And you might be, one or two moves away, and probably 15 to 30 days away from being in position and potentially raising your credit score, if the utilization is the only problem. And utilization is big for a lot of people and entrepreneurs and things like that, because they're using, running business and doing things, and a lot of times the utilization can suffer because you're using the personal credit, and now your personal credit score is a lot lower because you just haven't used. And there's some ways to be able to tap that, to leverage into that, where you can deal with that utilization pretty quickly, even without having to come up with a bunch of money, right? So if that's something that you want to know about, then let me know. Mr. Kelvin Wilson, hey, good evening. Thanks for the follow, and thanks for joining in tonight. Welcome. So if that's something that you want to know about, and if you feel like, okay, utilization is something that I have an issue with, right? And that is the only thing that's going to be potentially holding me back. And thanks for the gift, Kelvin Wilson. Thanks for the gift. I definitely appreciate that. Again, if you're getting value from this at all, please share this with somebody. Giving the gifts do help, and help tell the algorithm that this is a good information, and hitting the like button. So thank you guys. But if utilization is the only thing, I want you to put utilization in the chat, right? Because there are some things you can do to be able to, navigate around that, and a few tricks that can streamline you and fast track you to getting to the point where that's all taken care of, right? So if you want to go into that, then let me know. Otherwise, I'm going to keep going. So let's go through the rest of these points, so you can know for sure, is utilization the only thing blocking me? All right. So next is your inquiries need to be 0 to 3 inquiries on each bureau, right? Max. And ideally, you don't have any inquiries in the last 6 months. So you want to be mindful if you are about to go apply for a bunch of stuff, or pump the brakes if you're thinking about getting funding, thinking about 0% business credit and things like that, because the timing of all this does, have an impact, right? Qualitarian Life, thank you. Good evening. Thanks for hopping in. Good to see you. All right. So Now, so the inquiries need to be 0 to 3, and ideally none in the last 6 months. Right? We'll talk about inquiries a little deeper later. You need to have at least 7 to 10 accounts, primary accounts reporting on your credit report that are in your name. This is all your accounts: mortgages, student loans, auto loans, your store cards, credit cards. How many of those do you have overall, right? If it's less than 7 or less than 10, then you're going to be doing some building to be able to get enough meat on the bone that the banks like to see, right? Next is your average age of your credit needs to be 4 years or more, right? Ideally 4 years or more. Oh, Marley, thanks for the gift. Appreciate that. Appreciate you, and welcome in here. Marley, 2 times. So your average age of your credit needs to be 4 years or more, right? And I do have, if age is your only problem, then we have some things we can do to navigate that, to be able to increase your age on your credit profile, so that we can get over the hump for what these banks want to see and what the computers are looking at, right? So if you want to know that, then please put age in the chat if you want to hear about that. Otherwise, we're gonna keep going. All right. So after that is the last point is no negatives. So this is no late payments, no collections, no charge-offs, and no bankruptcy, right? So when we have that, and this is like totally clean, all right, that's the ideal. Now the one caveat is if you have late payments that are older than 2 years, then sometimes it has a little bit less of an impact and you can kind of squeeze in the door, right? So Marley 2 times says, let's talk about age, right? So if age is your only thing holding you back, right? Here's a few things you can do to be able to change or impact your age, right? Some of them are, I would say, temporary. Some of them are permanent, right? Why would you want temporary? Is because sometimes our temporary situation is we might have everything else ready for the funding. We just need to add something to boost it temporarily so we can get over the hump and be able to access these higher limit, approvals. And then now we've stacked up to, 100K to 80K to 120K, 150K, right? And we just use that to get in there, right? So what is that thing you can do is the first thing is an authorized user trade line, right? So someone else can add you as an authorized user to their credit card, right? And what that does is it's not a silver bullet to where it's now adding to your profile. Like I said, you need to have at least 2 credit cards in your name that are at least $3,000 or more. The authorized user card does not impact that, right? So it doesn't solve everything. However, it does impact your utilization and it impacts your average age of your credit. So let's say I've got a bunch of accounts, or maybe I went through a round of credit building where I got some different secured cards, and I got a pledge loan from Navy Federal, and I got some of these other accounts and things like that, and I built things up. But my profile, so I've got things in my profile now, but my profile is also very new. All right, so maybe my average age is under a year because I did all this stuff. You could have, if you do the calculation right, and there are calculators for this that you can leverage. But if you add like somebody's credit card, and that credit card is 20 years old, and you add that 20-year history in with your other history of this thing is 1 year, this is 6 months, this is, but that might bump the average overall up above 4 years, then that might be what you need to be able to push through, right? And again, for the age, the bare minimum would be like probably 2+ years on average for your credit. But that might be some of the difference between the level of approval that you would get or the level of limits that you would get. So we want to at least push for the maximum that we can go for. But that's one thing that you can do, is you can either have somebody that knows you add you as an authorized user, and if their card has good history, they've never missed any payments, they've got a high utilization. I mean, they've got a high limit on that card. They have low utilization, they hardly use it, and they can add you to it. Great, right? That might be a family member or something like that, and they just got these credit cards and not using it. It doesn't impact them at all because they don't even have to send you. A lot of people don't understand this. They don't even have to send you a card. It's not like you add an authorized user and that person just automatically has access to your account, right? The card comes to you as the owner, or comes to the owner, and then whoever is getting added as an authorized user would have to, be in contact with this owner and like get a card from them in order to actually use it. That's what happens in most cases, right? So this is something you can do. And if you don't have that family member or somebody that then what you can do is you can purchase an authorized user trade line from either a different marketplace or from people that sell them. I have some of them available for people, for my clients and people that I work with. And there's also others that I know that sell them. But then there's also websites such as like tradelinesupply.com, where you'll find a whole list of trade lines that you can get, and you can add those. And typically those are on your report for 60 days. And then you basically pay for 60 days at a time. So you can think about it from the client side, like if you need this extra age or an extra adjustment to your utilization, right? Because like I said, the utilization does add into your overall report, and that changes the calculation, right? So you could do it, or if you're on the other side and say, hey, I've got credit cards that I'm not using that have high limits, that have a lot of age, and you could be helping other people, and they could be paying you for your authorized user slots. Right. So there are some nuances. I can go into more detail about that. There are some nuances about how to approach that, but it's definitely an opportunity to be able to leverage. So Marley 2 times says, but when you're applying for certain fundings, don't the banks see that you have an authorized user? Yes, they do. All right. But this is for the computer, right? Will put you in a certain place if your average age, and this is why I say your average age is just the conglomerate of all of your ages. It's not necessarily looking at the fact that it was an authorized user or not. That's why I say that it's important in this particular case, right? This is the same with the utilization, the total utilization. So when you have, it's like the computer's looking for these data points, and when it sees your overall utilization at this point, or when it sees your average age at this point, it puts you in a certain category. And when it sees you below this threshold, puts you in another category. And depending on how the bank processes that, that could mean you're getting an extra underwriting process where you got to submit documents, or that could mean, a lower limit, or that could mean a denial, right? So that is a really important point to note. Realist, you, thanks for the follow. I appreciate that, and welcome. All right, please put your questions in the chat, you guys. I'm here to talk and to answer whatever it is that you have going on, right? So that's a good question, right? So the banks do see on the report that it's an authorized user, but there are certain categories that part doesn't matter, right? So that's why I said it's not a silver bullet. It's not going to be I add 3 authorized user accounts and they have a $20,000 limit, and now I can go use that as my comparables for business funding because, hey, I've got $20,000 limit. So now you're ready to give me $30,000 from my business credit card. It doesn't work like that, right? You have to have your own cards built up with your own limit, right? However, for the utilization and for the age, it definitely does have that impact. And the way that it's processed, it usually doesn't matter like what the source is from, right? So that's why people use it, and that's why it can be a powerful thing to add on to what you're doing. All right. So thanks for that question. Let me know if that makes sense and if that helped. All right. So let's keep going. So we just went through the whole blueprint, right? We just went through the whole blueprint of what do you need on the personal credit profile, right? And again, it's not just the score. The profile is what we need to look at. So if you have those elements in place, right? Yep, Marley. Okay, I'm glad that was helpful, right? When you have those elements in place, your credit score is probably going to reflect something above a 680, something above a 700, 720, some of these thresholds that you hear about a lot. But if you have that score, that doesn't automatically mean that you have what we just talked about, right? And the quick review is the number of credit cards that you have, right? At least 2 credit cards in your name. You've had them for at least a year, and they're at least $3,000 or more. Ideally $10,000. Your utilization is under 30%, right? Ideally under 10%. Again, if somebody wants to hear about the utilization play, put the utilization in the chat and I will share it, right? If that is your only hindrance, then you literally don't have much to worry about, because there's a few different things you can do that are very accessible. And even without having to come up with a bunch of extra money to actually pay down the cards, sometimes there's a couple moves you can make to be able to do that, right? So we talked about the inquiries needing to be at a certain amount. We talked about the number of accounts overall, your total accounts, and you can find that in your credit monitoring or whatever you use to see how many accounts that you have reporting. And then your average age, right, needs to be 4 years or more ideally, and then no negatives, no late payments, no collections, no charge-offs, no bankruptcy, right? So that's the first pillar. So let's go into the second pillar, right? And again, I will stop if you have a question. If you're tapping in here, thank you for joining. please hit the like button. If you're finding value in this, then share a gift. It's always appreciated. Thank you guys for so much for the gifts that you have shared so far. And please share this live with somebody, because this information is very powerful, very valuable. Like I said, I have paid a good amount of money to be able to access this, and I want to just hand it to you for free so that you can push your life forward. And the one thing that I would encourage you to do is to book a free consultation call, because you're going to be able to look at your situation specifically, because everybody's situation is different. And this is why this is, tricky to navigate a lot of times, because it takes a lot to know like what specifically in your situation that needs action. Because the state that you're in, the business that you're looking to run, your credit profile, the banks that you have relationships with already, all that factors into the strategy. It's like a chess game to be able to put everything together to make sure that it makes sense, right? So either way, you're going to walk away with value from that call, and that's either going to be a call about talking about your personal credit and what needs to be improved or adjusted in your personal credit to be ready, or it's going to be a funding direction where your credit is already solid, and now we're talking about, okay, what do you need to do to get funding, right? Now, if you are in a position, right? So let me see where we're at, like with those who are tapped in here, right? If you feel like you have all of those things that I talked about on that personal credit profile, then put ready in the chat, right? And if you feel like some of those things, like there's some issues with the credit that is not all the way there, Kyle. So I want you to put credit in the chat. All right. So let's just see where we're at with this. Now, again, the good news is wherever you are, you can still leverage this information to your advantage, right? Whether you are totally ready or whether you have to deal with your credit, right? And again, you need to start today to deal with the credit, because it's just going to make life easier across the board. This is the beautiful thing about this, is we're helping people to get towards funding. But once you do get there, because of what you've done with your personal credit profile and the things that you've tweaked and made to look robust and things like that, it helps your personal life across the board, because now your interest rates are lower, and whatever else you're going to do, you can leverage that as an asset towards so many other things. And it just makes life better having a nice solid personal credit score. And that score also stays intact, because as you do stuff on the business side, as you leverage these cards and these accounts and things like that, it's not showing up on your personal credit. This is like such a powerful point, right? So if I have a $20,000 card on the business side and I use $20,000 of it, guess what doesn't happen? My credit score is not impacted at all, right? If you are using the right business cards from the banks that don't report to personal, right? So most business cards do that, but there are some business cards that also report to personal. So you want to be mindful of that. And that's part of the strategy and the funding sequence as well, to know, okay, which banks are we going to that, have this leverage, right? But again, you can do all the moves that you need to make on the business side and leverage these funds and keep your personal intact for whatever else is you want to do. Or sometimes it's just helpful. Again, like I said, having a higher credit score, you get, favorable treatment, or you get lower interest rates or better terms with whatever it is that you're doing, right? So you can just keep that intact. And how do I know this? Because like I told you, we have between my wife and myself, we have over 500,000 in business credit. And since I've started in 2021 in the entrepreneurial journey, there's a lot of things that have gone well, a lot of things that have not gone well. And there's balances on some of these cards and things like that, and things that I have to deal with. And my personal score is still maintained at the optimum. Last time I checked, it was literally 850 on one bureau, and it was like 847 on another, or something like that. So this is like I'm living it, the living proof that you can use this stuff on the business side and not impact the personal. And I know there's tons of business owners or people that are just leveraging using their personal credit, and it's hurting their scores, right? And hurting their opportunities, hurting their interest rates and things like that, right? So this is something that you want to make sure that you stay tapped in with. And you can leverage this because it's a very strong position to be in as you move forward, right? So again, put your questions in the chat. I want you to share this live with somebody. Hit the like button. If you're getting value from this, then feel free to share a gift. And all of it is appreciated, right? So let's keep going. Like, what is the entity structure that you need, right? And this is the second pillar of all of this, is what's the entity structure in order to be the best position possible to get the max limits, the max funding on this credit card stacking, the 0% stacking approach, right? Again, it's not the only approach in town, but it is a powerful one and it's one of the quickest, right? This is why it's a really strong one to start with. So on your business side, your business name is really important to start with, right? So the business name needs to be something that is not high risk, right? And if you look at the business name, and if it indicates anything that's like a high risk industry, then that's already going to be a problem, right? If somebody wants to know what those industries are, I can go into more detail about it. But that's the first thing, right? So the easiest way to do this is to have a very generic business name, right? And it's like a keyword and enterprises, or a keyword and group, or last name and solutions, or something generic like that that can have a wide range, so that when you do go to the bank and they ask for like, what is your business description, then you can give them kind of at least an angle on what you do that is towards the least friction industries, right? And what are the least friction industries? There's a whole list of them, but some of the main ones are going to be something having to do with like marketing, or like education, or like consulting. You know, these are typically going to be the ones that are the least risk to the banks. So if it looks anything like that, then you're oftentimes good to go, and you can have a position in your entity that's set up for the banks like the way that they want to see it, and then you can have some slight variations in like your client facing operation. All right, and those two things can be a critical part of the strategy, and I'm going to share that and break that down in just a little bit. Right, so that business name is important. Next is your business address is really important as well, and the one thing to look out for here is you want to make sure that it doesn't seem like it is a PO box, for lack of a better word. And somebody says, no, so we don't want it to look like a PO box, because banks don't like PO boxes because it seems very unstable, right? Or it seems like very low hanging fruit for somebody to be able to get into and just get out of. And they like things that are solid. So if you have a brick and mortar address and you're running a business, that's always going to be the best. So just keep that and run with it, right? If you have if you don't have a business like that, or a brick and mortar location, then that's where we talk about, okay, am I using my home address for the business, or am I leveraging a virtual address for the business? All right, so those are kind of the options if you don't have something physical. And traditionally, we would say, okay, let's use a virtual address, and you get that, you sign up for the virtual address, and you're good to go. But the banks recently, and this is a lot of the new sauce that a lot of people don't know, is the banks have been changing their approach to how they look at virtual addresses. They've been tightening things up a lot when it comes to virtual addresses, right? So your likelihood of having a high amount of success with that is a little bit more narrow, right? Now, here's a few things that you can do to make sure, right? And the I'll just shortcut to the answer here is a lot of what our clients are doing is you're actually leveraging a home address based LLC or entity, business entity, and using that home address to be able to get the max funding in this process. And then you having a different LLC, a 2 LLC setup, where the other LLC has whatever address that I want, whatever information that I want on there, and this is my client facing one, right? So that's one way to do it. And a reason that you might want to do that is because the home address, some people say like a home address is not really suitable for like down the road, or like some of the bigger funding, and different like large lines of credit and large term loans and large things like that, which for those people that are starting out, you may not even have to worry about for right now. Because if you can get access to 150,000, or 120,000, and if you can't convert that into new income, then that's kind of a separate problem. You know what I mean? But if you can leverage that home address to be able to access again the max amount of funding on that credit stacking approach, then that's a very valid thing to think about, right? And what you can do when you have that dual LLC setup is you can protect the other concern, which is pretty much privacy, right? So if you're using your home address on a business entity that's submitted to the state, anybody can look up the state, the address for pretty much any businesses, and it'll show up on the secretary site and things like that, right? So the way that you can navigate that is, again, if I have a separate LLC that's designated for my client side, and then this LLC on the funding side is really only, dealing with the banks, and clients are not seeing, I'm not advertising it anywhere, nobody really knows the name of it, then there's much less concern about, okay, is something going to happen privacy wise, so you can still leverage both to do what you need to do. Now, as far as the virtual address, real quick, um, the thing you're going to do is you're going to make sure, number one, that this address does not show up as a commercial mail receiving agency, right? And what is that? Is it's an address that is pretty much designated for sending and receiving mail for other people, and not as a place of business, right? And how do you check that? Right? I have a video on this that goes into detail. If you want more detail on it right now, if you feel like you're in that space, you want to know about it, just comment and I will go into detail. But I'm just going to share the quick overview. Is you need to go and Google the USPS site, and it's going to be USPS zip code lookup, right? And when you find USPS zip code lookup, you're going to put the address that you're being proposed in there. And this might be your address from iPostal One or from Opus or Regis. You're going to put that in there. And when you do that, it's going to have a line item on there. And that line item is going to say CMRA, and it's going to be a Y or an N, or yes or no. If your address says Y on that line item, then that's a bad sign, right? Because that's almost like the equivalent of a post office box. And the banks and anybody else you're dealing with is going to know that essentially this is not your place where you do business, right? It's like a placeholder. Again, they don't like to see that. So so what you can do is look at that address and see if it's got an N on that address line. Then that's at least a starting point to say, okay, at least I'm not cut off at that point, right? Now the next thing you can do is you can Google it on Google Street View, and you can see what shows up when you do Google Street View, right? So is this a nice office building at that address? If it's not, a lot of times with these other CMRA addresses, it might be like a Staples, and that is like a clear indication, again, like you don't own the Staples, so it's a clear indication that you don't run your business from here. This is like a PO box, and this is either an instant denial or a lower amount of limits, and just something that we want to avoid. Here's the third thing that you're going to do. If you are determined to use that virtual address, you want to make sure when you file this address with the IRS, right, with the state, with anywhere that you put it, you want to make sure and not include the mailbox designation on that address, right? So let me give you an example. When you purchase one of these addresses, it's going to give you something. Oftentimes, it's going to give you something like 123 Main Street, Suite 300, and PMB 2006 or something like that. And PMB is your post mailbox, or it might say box 2006, or it might say number 2006, the hashtag sign in 2006, right? So when you look at that, that is an automatic indicator that this is a post mail office box or a post box, right? So when you go to submit that in different places, now that's going to kind of label your business as, again, like a PO box type thing. So what you're going to do is you're going to take that out completely. And when you file, you're only going to file with the suite number on your filing, on the address. So let's say 123 Main Street, Suite 300. Now, so what that's going to do is it looks more legit because this is just a suite number, and you could very well just be a part of that suite. So it's a small thing, but it makes a big difference when it comes to setting yourself up for the best possible funding approach, right? So if you're just tapping in right now, thank you guys for being in here. Like I said, this is the exact blueprint, right? These are the exact things that you would need in order to get access to 100,000, 150,000, 120,000. And again, depending on who you leverage, if you leverage multiple people and multiple LLCs and things, you can stack that up in different ways. But it's a very powerful thing. This could be in the next 30 days. Like I said, one of my clients recently, from the time she booked her call with the team to the time she had $90,000 available for her real estate business, 22 days. Right. So it can go very quickly once you just have these things lined up. Right. So Put your questions in the chat. If you have anything that you feel like you want to know, you want to ask about, put it in the chat, and I'm glad to answer to the best of my ability. All right. So we talked about the name, we talked about the business address. Now, once you have those two, and I would say to do it in this order, even before you open an LLC, before you even start about this, when you have this stuff lined up, then you can have all the information on the LLC right from the beginning. And that is a good structure to stand on instead of having to open it up and then maybe having to go back and clean things up or change things. Is just more annoying and more legwork, right? So the third point that's really, really important is that all the information needs to match across the board, right? It needs to match across the board. So it needs to be exactly the same. And I mean, like, to the point of the lettering, the casing, the period, where you use periods, and where those go. For example, if you have, the name of the LLC, and then LLC is spelled out in with periods, and then on another filing, like with the state, versus the IRS, maybe you have a L dot L dot C dot. Those are two different businesses practically, right? In the eyes of the computer. And sometimes if the computer gets confused about what business it is, because maybe there's a different address, or the address is listed differently, or the name is slightly different, then it's going to think it's more than one, and it's going to get confused about, like, okay, what are we dealing with here? And again, that might put you in another category. You want as little friction as possible when it comes to these applications at the banks. So you want to be in the best possible category. And this is why I would say, again, all that stuff that I talked about, the personal credit profile that you need. And if somebody needs me to go over that again, please let me know, put it in the chat. But all those things on that personal credit profile, all that stuff helps to get us in the best position where we can just slide right through to the approval, the least friction possible, right? Versus, is there a flag that comes up and now someone has to review it in a different way? You know what I mean? Or now we might have to submit other documentation and things like that, right? So that's what we're looking at, right? So so once we have that matching information across the board, now we need a business phone number, right? Something that's a dedicated line, ideally just not your cell phone. Again, this is a small thing where it just makes a little bit of difference because it's a little bit more legit, and legit equals safe to the banks, and safe means their pockets are open, right? So so the business phone number, you can get it from Grasshopper or some of these Ring Central, some of these different places that you can get a dedicated line from. Next would be the business website and a domain-based email address. All right. So your business website doesn't have to be anything crazy. And a lot of people get overthink about this. It's just a very simple landing page, that looks clean and that delivers the information about what your business is and where it is. Right. So it's got your business name, it's got your logo, it's got your business phone number, and contact information, email. Maybe the address is even listed on there, and you've got the maybe a mission statement or a statement about what the business does. And again, you might want to gear that in a certain way. If you can at all gear it towards, we do consulting in some way, we do marketing in some way, we do education in some way, and pretty much anybody's business, if you're ever going to do that in any capacity, as far as like teaching other people, or again, some sort of marketing or things like that, then you can reasonably kind of angle it that way. That's going to be the better position for the banks. And a lot of people go as far as, I have a website that's for my funding applications, something very generic, very clean. That's, again, exactly the way the banks want to see it. I have that set up there. And then I have another entity that's my client facing one. So like I said, I put whatever name, whatever information I want there. I can use my Gmail if I want to with the clients, because the banks are not really seeing that one. You know what I mean? So this is part of the strategy too that can work a lot of times. So so we have that business website, and you can get a website created for you if you go to Fiverr.com. Somebody could create that for you like literally tonight, in the next couple hours, for probably $20. And you give them the information and they can whip it up. The same thing goes with if you use GoDaddy to get this website. The domain, I mean, they have like AI website builders. You can type the information that you want in there and it'll spit out a website. You can even do logos and things like that. So that part is not hard to be able to do, to set it up. If you want somebody to set that stuff up for you, then we have ways to help out with that. But it's not hard to put these things together, especially once you know what they are and just can knock them out, right? So you need a domain-based email address. So ideally no Gmail, no Yahoo, and things like that. Just get your, info at such and such.com, you know what I mean? Or your name at yourbusiness.com. So we want to get that domain-based email. That's another point that makes it more legit. And again, legit, safety equals pockets open from the banks. So once you have those, the last one is your online presence needs to be solid, right? So you're going to get like a Google My Business. Listen, you can submit your information to Google My Business so that your information shows up when somebody Googles it, right? Very simple. Same with the Google panel, the little panel on the right side. If somebody puts in a name, you can submit your information to that, right? Reviews always help. If somebody can get reviews, then that, again, if somebody does look this up and it pops up and looks like, oh, this looks like a normal, legit business, then that's sometimes all you need to be able to get past, to slide past that check, so that this doesn't require any additional underwriting, or you don't just get like a denial, again, in some instances. So next is going to be does it show up on Yelp? Does it show up on Bing? Does it show up in the 411 registry? And the way you can do that is you can write this down. You can go to listyourself.net, right? And you can put in your information for the business, and you can either pay for the national listing, or you can do the lower or the free version for the local listing. But it just helps, again, you put this in as many places as possible, because any legitimate business is going to be visible, right? It's going to be found. So if you're doing that and all the information matches across the board, again, the address, the number, everything is the same, everything is tight, then that's the best position you can be in, right? So once you have all that, you can also submit that information to Dun & Bradstreet, right, for a Dun & Bradstreet filing. Now, Dun & Bradstreet is tied in with the Paydex score and things like that. And you'll hear a lot of people, when you hear the term business credit, you'll hear a lot of people talk about leveraging your Paydex score and getting your EIN only credit, and like no PG products and things like that. And maybe I need to get net 30 accounts, and I'm building up net 30 accounts for 90 days or 120 days. And then I get some gas cards, and then I get, these other things, so it's a whole strategy, and it is a thing that exists. But this is a totally different approach, where we're able to fast track this to be able to get into these high limit amounts, right? And actually, if you are building business credit, as far as like your business credit scores, then this stacking way is actually one of the better ways to go into it, because what happens is you get approved for these cards that are 10,000, that are 25,000, that are 45,000, that are 30,000, and this is what you have. And a lot of these things report to the Business Credit Bureau. So now, instead of my Uline account, for $300, and my Quill account for $400, and my, whatever for $100 that's on my report, those are cool to have those trade lines. But you're starting off with 10,000, you're starting off with 15,000, with 25,000, 40,000, 50,000. And with these things on your report, if you manage them well, then that's such a stronger position to be in. And then if you decide to go back and build the other business credit, when you do go to Uline and you do go to Quill and these other places, Granger, you can get approved for higher amounts for your net 30s, because they've already seen on your business credit report that you have these higher limits that you've dealt with. So this is the same thing where we qualified for the business credit by leveraging our personal credit limits, and they're looking at those limits to see like, well, how much are we going to give you? All right, this is kind of the same thing where we can start off on a better foot, where we've got these high limit things in our profile to begin with. And then everything else from there is going to be kind of compared to that, right? So this is another reason that this strategy is a good one, at least to start with. And then you can kind of pivot maybe into some other strategies later on that don't involve like a personal guarantee and things like that. But again, it's just one of the most effective ways to go about it, in my opinion, right? So once you have all of that, that's literally the blueprint. Again, if you're just joining in, welcome and good evening. And I want you to make sure that you share this with somebody. And if you've gotten any value at all, and you're getting these gems, then feel free to share a gift, because that does help out the algorithm and things like that, and lets people know that this is a good thing going on. Hit the like button. And again, please put your questions in the chat, right? So Funny Time says, I have no business credit. How do I start? Everyone is asking for my personal credit. Yep. So here's the thing. So this is how you start, right? Again, according to this strategy, right? And funny times, here's what people will say, right? So say, okay, I don't want to leverage my personal credit for this, right? Because maybe my personal credit isn't good, or maybe I don't have that much. So I will go and I'll get these net 30 accounts and different things like that. I'll build this up. And maybe if you do it right, in 90 days, you can kind of be a little bit down the road. And then maybe another 90 days, I can have my other tiers set up. And then after that, then maybe I can eventually access a credit card for $10,000, from this particular bank. Or once I have my score up to a certain point, if you're doing like you want to get like an auto loan. And thank you guys, funny times, for the gift badge. And realist, appreciate you guys for the gifts, right? If you're doing like auto things, like if you're trying to do Turo, or you want to get an auto loan, there are strategies to be able to build up your EIN and just get your Paydex score, your 80 Paydex score. And then I'm going to use that score to leverage towards, like getting an auto loan and things like that. So that's a real thing. But if you're talking about like trying to get credit cards, or cards that we can just get used at like cash credit instead of just like those types of loans, it's very difficult to be able to get access to that, right? So funny times, you said, I'm a truck driver, you really need to purchase another truck, right? So this is one of the main things, and this is why I say start today, right? And if you're just joining in, funny times, this is a good time to refresh these strategies, right? Because the personal credit profile that I just shared, right, that's going to get you access in the next 30 to 40 days to 100K, to 120K, 150K, right? There's multiple ways to go about this. But when you have that personal credit profile, then you have the best chance to be able to get directly into the business credit, right? And again, you can get directly into it also by having that strong foundation, and then you can later build on it later, right? So if you want me to go over what the personal credit profile was, I will, right? So this was, and please take note of this, right? So you can start today to build up your credit, right? So if your personal credit is not great, just start today to fix it. A lot of our clients that need help with credit are getting results in the first 90 days. So 90 days from now, I was looking at the end of February, you could be set up to be able to access 100K, 120K, 150K. Then that's a real possibility, right? Some of you, again, your credit score might be lower just because of your utilization, and you might be one or two moves away that you can execute on in the next 48 hours that would position you to be able to access, that the business credit, to change your credit score if it's just utilization. So there might be a few things missing to get to that point, right? And again, I want you to make sure you go to fundingmyfuture.net to book a call with the team, right? It's a free consultation call to look at your next step, whether that's with your credit or with your funding next step, right? So funny times. So let's talk about this as far as your trucking situation. All right. So you can start today to work on your credit, right? Now, if you don't have that, here's the other thing you can do is, once you know the blueprint of what's required, like what it takes, and you just understand this whole concept of being able to access these amounts when it comes to the credit card stacking and things like that. Once you do that, then you can also leverage what's called a credit partner, right? So I have someone else that I'm going to partner with, and they have the credit profile and they're not using it, right? And then they can get funded. Either they're on my operating agreement and they're the ones that's like the majority owner, at least on paper, for a time. And that's where the banks are going to base the funding on that person. Or a clean way to do it is they just have their own LLC set up. We get them funded 100K, 120K, 150K, 80K. And then you guys can work together. That this LLC is going to fund or loan funds to the other entity, right? So that's another way to do it, right? So so you have lots of options. But again, I don't want you to worry about your personal credit being being asked for, even because a lot of these cash credit things are going to be based on your credit profile. And like I said before, once you build up your personal credit, it's just going to help your life, period, right? So we're using our personal credit to get into the door, but these accounts do not report to our personal credit, right? So there's not a direct impact to the personal credit, aside from the fact that when we apply for these different cards and things, there's going to be a hard pull on our personal credit, like a hard inquiry, right? So slight impact there. But the beauty of it is with these business credit cards, they do not show up on the personal credit. So any inquiry that's not tied to an open account on our personal credit, we technically have the a right and the ability to be able to remove those inquiries from our credit report, right? So now, once we get access to these different business credit cards and different products, and they're doing hard inquiries, right? We can now go and wipe off all those inquiries that we got, and we can go back and rinse and repeat and get more, business credit, right? So LA says, for a construction business, should I generalize the business name, or is it okay to use design and build? I would generalize. I would generalize. Now, here's what you could do, LA, is I would generalize that if you're going to use a single entity structure, right? Then I would generalize the name officially, and then I would have a DBA, right? So that for my client facing, for my website, for whatever else, I have this DBA that is whatever name that I want. And then when I submit things to the bank, then it's this like generalized and official name, official name, right? That's very generic and basic. So that's how I would do it. Or like I said, you could have another LLC that's just designated for funding. So it's got the name, the address, or whatever. That's going to be the max position for funding. And then I have a whole nother LLC that's designated towards my my business that I'm doing. Right. So the nuance here is, it's going to depend on the bank. Right. So some banks are fine with people that do design and build, right, in construction. Some banks are not fine with it. They consider that part of real estate risky, right? So certain aspects of real estate, if you're like a property manager, or you do some other things, then that can be fine. And but it might not be the maximum limit that you can get from each individual card. Again, it's going to depend on the bank. So that's why I say it's not the end of the world if you have that and you decide to move forward with that. Worst case, if it didn't work with one bank, then we would go to 3 others. You know what I mean? And find a way to make it work to get to your goal. So that's one. But we're going to make it easier on ourselves if everything is set up the way that the banks want to see it from the beginning. All right. So let me know if that makes sense and if that answers your question. Again, you guys, please take advantage of this. Put your questions in the chat. Your questions in the chat. I've paid a good amount of money for this information. Right. I've been around it for a while now, both on the client side as well as learning how to help people with it. So I want you to be able to squeeze as much out of this as you can, right? So you can push your life forward. So again, if you feel like this is valuable at all, feel free to share a gift, share this live with somebody, hit the like button, all that stuff. Cause like I said, it's really, really powerful information to know. And it's very accessible to people. Like I said, there's more than one way. And for funny times, if you're still tapped in, there's more than one way. Like I said, sometimes you can get an auto loan, leveraging the EIN only and things like that. But it's just going to help so much when you just decide today, okay, I'm going to have good personal credit, right? Even better, I have good personal credit. I just don't have it right now. And I'm just going to start working on it. And again, you work with the team and they can help to position your credit the best possible way for funding, right? And again, however long that takes. If your credit score is a little lower and it's literally just your utilization, you might be literally 1 or 2 moves away, 1 or 2 days away from being in position. And then that would be maybe 30 days from that point that you could access, again, 100K, 80K, whatever it is, so this is a very powerful strategy. And for those that didn't pick up on this, the other benefits are, okay, this doesn't show up on my personal credit. I can use as much as I want to on these business credit cards, as long as I'm using it legit for business and things that's going to make an ROI, right? You can use it for whatever you want to, but you got to make sure you're using it the right way, right? But once I do use that, my personal credit stays intact, right? So it's not impacting my scores and things like that. And once you build that up, like I said, your interest rates are lower. Everything just becomes easier, right? Everything becomes easier on the personal credit side, right? So funny times, you said 520 and 524 on 2 sites. Okay, hey, as long as we know that information, that's fine. We know that information. Now we can do the dual approach. So I say, funny times, start today to work on it. Like I said, our team has been helping people and we can help people. A lot of people are seeing results in the first 90 days. So just start the ball rolling on that. And then in the process, then you can get some more advice on, okay, well, not only do I need to remove some of these charge offs or whatever's on there, but I also need to start adding some accounts to my report so that by the time this is all done, now I'm going to be all ready and set to go, right? If some of that has to do with utilization, like I said, there's just different things we can do. I'm just going to share it, right? Just because I said it so many times, is that if your utilization and your credit score for that factor is based on your credit card debt, your revolving credit card debt, right? So if your utilization is high and that's bringing your score down, there's one thing you can do to be able to switch that over without having to come out of pocket necessarily any. And is that all it is shifting the debt from one type to another type, from one vehicle to another vehicle. And what is that? An installment type debt is different than the revolving debt. So that's like credit cards is different than having like a personal loan. So if I get a personal loan, and again, let's just say for numbers, let's just say I had a $10,000 in my personal credit card debt across a couple different cards, and my utilization is like pretty much maxed out. All right. I could get a personal loan for $10,000 and then pay off those credit cards. And then when that balance goes down, as soon as that reports on my credit, immediately what's going to happen is my score is going to shoot up through the roof, right? Because your utilization makes up about 30% of your credit score. 30% of your score on a 550 point scale, basically between 300 and 850, 30% of that is a significant amount, right? That's like 150 points. So your scale can shoot up a lot. And then what happens is now I've got this personal loan. The debt is the same, still 10,000, right? But I still have this personal loan that I have for 10,000. I've got zero on my credit cards, and now I'm ready for funding. So now I can go and get 100,000, 120,000 in 0% interest business credit, and then effectively move that 10,000 balance from the personal loan over to the business credit. So now we went from 29%, 30% on the credit cards, now all the way over to 0% on the business credit. And guess what? Those amounts don't report to my personal credit report anymore. So not only is that 10,000 off of my utilization and my credit score went up, but it's off of my DTI and all that stuff, period, because it's not showing up on my report because now it's on the business side. Now the next question is, okay, well, what am I going to do to be able to leverage these funds to be able to actually make new money? If you don't have that part in place, then this is not for you, right? Or you just be thinking about, okay, well, what am I going to do to be able to leverage this? Again, is there a mentor you can tap? Is there a strategy you can get into? Like, do you know like exactly what you want to do and why? You know, all that stuff is important. But if you have that stuff in place, the money is not the problem, right? And like I said, some of you might be just a quick few moves away to be able to get into this, right? So what is the cost for your team? Says Funny Times. So this consultation is free, absolutely free consultation, right? If you have in your situation, depending on what's in your report, right? They have to look at it to know how much effort it's going to take. But what I can tell you is like 99 times out of 100, there is a very affordable option like monthly to be able to pay so that you can get started into it, right? So when you meet with the team, you'll be able to get laid out. Okay, this is exactly what it is. This is exactly what it's going to take, and this is the path forward. You know what I mean? And again, the benefit and the value of that is it's not just a credit repair. You're like in the system once you're there, so you're getting additional kind of consultation on what do you need to set up for funding. You can start asking your questions about like set up for funding and things like that. So that is it's a dual, like almost like a triple benefit, because you're getting that repaired and set up, but then now you're preparing yourself for the future of like the end result of how can I be best positioned to leverage funding in multiple angles. For again, Funny Times for you, that might be I'm doing a business credit card stacking at 0%, but I'm also maybe leveraging some auto loan and vehicle loan products. And maybe eventually I'm leveraging an SBA loan or something like for the business. So there's all these other things that the team can help with, because we're helping with everything pretty much across the board when it comes to funding and credit. But like I said, I'm sharing this 0% strategy because it's so powerful and so accessible once you get into it. Now, Funny Times, here's the other thing. If I didn't say it before, if I didn't emphasize it before, the other thing you can do is to leverage a credit partner, right? Right now, that if you can partner with them and they have the credit, then they can be the ones to get that 100K, 120K, 80K. And then now they're working with you to be able to fund that business or fund whatever you need. So now their entity is the one that's maybe using these funds to get the next truck, right? Or to do repairs. And again, I've done some things in trucking, so I'm somewhat familiar with the process and some of the pitfalls that can happen and how quickly things can change when you don't have funds to be able to make a repair on a truck. I've seen that firsthand. You know what I mean? Or you don't have funds to pay the driver or float the costs. It's just such a game changer to be able to have access to business credit, even if it's not 0%, just having access to a certain amount that you could use in a time period is like really powerful. But when you combine that with the 0% interest for 12 to 18 months and you strategically apply that, that's it's really, really important. Right. So again, you guys, so put your comments in the chat, and your questions in the chat, right? So I want to make sure that you guys understand again what are the ways you can leverage this now. So searching 3106 says, I have all the foundation set up. All I need is funding. Yep, searching 3106. If that's you, then I suggest that you book a call with the team, like ASAP, right? Go to fundingmyfuture.net. You can even text me at 240-240-6402 or 240-240-642. And I can send you the direct link, right? So if you have all that foundation set up, your personal profile is good and good according to those bullet points that I just shared, again, which is like a nugget worth of a blueprint for anybody to know. But if that's all you have and all you need is the funding, then we would just be talking about, okay, well, which type is going to be the best for your fit? How much are you looking for? I mean, what type? What's the timeline that you wanted in? That's what the team is able to help, like, dig into your situation. So that's what I would suggest for you. Get on a free consultation call, and we can move things forward because the funding is there, and we're able to help get you connected with that, right? So yeah, let me know if you have any other questions about that. And if anybody is just joining in, like I said, I want you to make sure that you are taking advantage of that free consultation call. And if you want me to go over the personal credit profile again, right, I will do that, right? So if somebody just put credit in the chat, and I will go over it one more time just to make sure that you're clear on like exactly what the next steps are, right? And funny times, thanks for the follow. And so when you do get that consultation booked, right? So when you have that call, if they're going to be talking about your credit, and then you could also indicate, hey, this is what I'm trying to do. These are like the funding I'm trying to get, so we can kind of start that conversation forward. If you decide to join in, then you can be getting that information while you go along. And like I said, that's a benefit, is like a long-term relationship with us. It's not just a kind of one and done, which a lot of time there's a lot of places you can go to get repair, credit repair, and so people have mixed results and things like that. I can tell you I've seen that the team has worked with, and that additional benefit is really, really valuable to say, okay, well, what else do I need to get ready for funding? And it's a whole different ball game, right? So searching says repeat the info, and you're on it. Okay, I will do it just for you. Searching 3106. Again, this might be a good time to share. If you haven't shared this, share this with somebody now, because if somebody taps in and gets this is like the gold info right here, because there's multiple ways that this is valuable, right? And I just said, either number one, either you're using it for yourself because you're in position and now you can just jump on it, or number two, you're not in position, and while you're going to be working on your credit, you can be leveraging a credit partner, right, to be able to partner up with, and now you can get access to the funding that way. All right. Number three is, even if you're not in position, or if you are in position, once you know these factors, then you can start to be referring people to get funding, and you can get paid out. The last payout that I did not too long ago, I sent a friend of mine $2,252 for referring one client, right, who got funded, and she didn't have to lift a finger, right? She didn't have to do pretty much anything. Probably the easiest money that she ever made, just for referring the right person. So if you do that once a month, if you do that twice a month, if you do that 4 or 5 times a month, then that starts to add up very quickly, right? But just for you searching, I will repeat it. So here we go. So please write this down. So what is the personal credit profile? These are the bullet points, the data points that you need to be able to be in the best position possible for funding. Number one is probably one of the most important is you need at least 2 credit cards with at least $3,000 limit or more, bare minimum, right? Ideally, you've got some credit cards that are $10,000, $15,000, $20,000, and ideally you've had them again for more than a year, right? And your overall credit limit across all your cards needs to be at least 30,000, ideally, all the way up to 100,000. Like I said, the bare minimum, if you had just 2 cards with 3,000, then you could get in the doorway, right, with some approvals and things like that. But the sweet spot is going to be so your overall is 30,000 to 100,000, and your each individual card, you have at least 2 of those individual cards that are above 10,000 or above, 5 to 10,000 or 15,000 or something like that. That's a big one, right? Number 2 is your utilization needs to be under 30% minimum. Ideally, it's under 10%. Right. And we just talked about some ways you can deal with utilization with that personal loan thing, or just being able to shift from that revolving utilization. Or if you have the money to pay it down, then maybe it's time to pay it down if you want to go it that way. Number 3, your inquiries need to be between 0 and 3 per bureau before you start a funding sequence. Ideally, you have 0 inquiries in the last 6 months, and any inquiries that are not tied to open accounts on your credit report, you technically have the ability to remove those. Right. So you can remove those inquiries and then set yourself up in a good position. If it is tied to an open account on your credit report, you probably want to leave it alone. I know people that don't and do it anyway, and then you kind of run the risk of the creditor closing your account and different things like that. So that's why I wouldn't suggest it. But some people have been doing it for a long time and say, hey, it's all good. I'm removing the inquiries anyway. But if it's not in the recent 6 months, it has a little bit less impact on the funding conversation. So that was number 3. Number 4, you need to have at least 10 primary accounts, 7 to 10 accounts reporting in your name on your credit profile. Mortgages, auto loans, student loans, store cards, credit cards, all of the above, right? Reporting to your profile. Now, number 5, your average age of your credit needs to be at least 4 years or more, right? That's a sweet spot. If you're at least 2 years or more, then you can still squeeze in the door. Right. But it might be, again, some different types of approvals and things like that. Right. So, and Jimmy Montgomery, thanks for the follow. Definitely appreciate that. So here's the last point, and searching. I hope you're still tracking. Hope you're still tracking. Right. I'm doing this just for you, just for your sake this evening. Right. So the last point is we want no negatives, no derogatories. That means no late payments, no collections, no charge-offs, no bankruptcies. Clean. That's the ideal. The only little caveat is if you have late payments that are older than 2 years, it can have a little less impact. And sometimes you can squeeze by if it's older than 2 years and everything else since 2 years is clean. If it's under 2 years, then that's where we need to deal with it before we start any type of funding. So searching, I want you to put ready in the chat if all of those things that I just said, like, you got that. Right, because that's the structure that we're talking about, and this is the dual pillars of what we need to access this. Right, so Jimmy, you're ready, right? So if that's you, you need to be hopping on a call because you could be sitting on 100K, 120K, 150K, 80K in the next 30 days. Very, very possible. Right, and this is almost regardless of your LLC setup. Right, so we talked about the LLC or the entity, whatever entity that you might have, and the things that you need to set up there. Even if you don't have an entity yet, we can make sure that it's set up from the jump, or at least guide you on how to set it up from the jump so that it's there right now. But it's that personal profile that's really the main pillar, right? Because if you have that, you're ready to go. I would say you need to be, and that's you too searching. You need to be booking a call. You need to go to fundingmyfuture.net right now, or hit the link in my bio. Again, or text me 240-642. You text me and I'll send you the link directly, right? That's your next move, right? To be able to look at, okay, what are the next steps? And if you follow directions right, like I said, with one of my recent clients, it was 22 days from the time she booked the call with the team to when she had 90,000 for her real estate business. And she only stopped there because that was what she needed. She didn't necessarily need any more. We could have gotten more for her, but that's where she wanted to stop. So that was it. So LA, which business structure, and Jimmy, thanks so much for the gift. I definitely appreciate that. And you guys, if you guys are getting value from this at all, again, the more gifts that you can spare, the more the algorithm knows that this is like good information. The more likes, the more shares, the more comments. You know, uh, like I said, I'm here sharing this with you because it's been helpful for me, and I want you to access this type of stuff too, because it opens up so many doors. It changes your mindset when you have access to funding, access to capital. It changes how you think about navigating things. Now, you want to be careful with that because you don't want to just go willy nilly. And when you got too much power, and and you're not being careful and things like that. But again, if you have the will to be focused on it, it just changes so much to be able to access this capital, right? So LA says, which business structure, LLC or Inc., is more appealing to banks for funding? I would say at this stage, I don't think it's going to matter, right, between the two. So if you have a reason to use one versus the other, then I would definitely do that. But again, this is why this is so powerful. Is whichever one that you have. When we talk about this, if we're talking about business credit card stacking at 0% interest, where I can stack up to 100,000, 150,000, 120,000, and this is just on the first like round. If you decided to loop around 6 months later or 3 months later, after these accounts season and things like that, and you want to go again for another round, you can go to get another 100,000, another 200, and this is how people, some clients like they got them 300,000, in the 6 months, or 320,000 or things like that. So if you want to take it further, you can. And that's what I'm saying. This setup can take you that far, right? So there are some other nuances for why you might use a corporation, versus an LLC, and that might have to deal with some of the further down the road funding things. But as far as this strategy goes, you can do it with anything. And like I said, even if you don't have an LLC right now, even if you're just starting in business, again, these are no doc programs, which is why it's so powerful, because you don't have to submit tax returns. You don't have to have proof of revenue. A lot of people are like, well, I don't have the revenue. How am I going to get? You don't have to submit that. You don't have to submit the business plan. You don't have to submit personal financial statement. There are ways to be able to leverage into it and access it again in the next 30 days, potentially, if you're sitting on that profile, and you're willing to follow the steps and things like that, you might be sitting right on it, right? So I hope that answers that question. Yep. So, oh yeah, I appreciate the gift. I appreciate the gift searching, and again, thank you guys for the likes and everything. So that was it. So that was the personal credit profile structure, right? And that was the business entity structure. Like, this is when you have those two things combined, this is one of the best and the fastest ways to be able to leverage into this sort of funding, right? Now, there are some nuances where we can add in some lines of credit and things like that, but most of those other things, those other products, are going to require all the other documents. They're going to require, ideally, you've been in business for 2 years, you have tax returns and things like that. If you have other things that you need, that you're bringing to the table, there are ways we can get you funded. So even if your credit is not great, but if you've got solid income in your business for the past 6 months and you make more than $10,000 to $20,000 a month, and you can show that with your bank statements, there's different funding we can get you. If you got, real estate or properties or stock portfolios or life insurance, there's different things you can leverage into these different products to be able to get lines of credit and term loans and all these other things. So if that's you, then the team can talk with you about that as well. But like I said, I want to share and make sure everybody is clear on how powerful the 0% credit stacking strategy can be, because of how accessible it can be, even if you're just starting out, or even if you are officially running business. Just being able to strategically leverage $100,000 or $150,000 or $80,000 in 0% credit, for 12 months at a time, that can change the game for a lot of things. Because of the interest that you're paying or not paying. There's just so many ways to be able to go into it. So I wanted to make sure that was clear for you guys. But again, I appreciate it. Please make sure that you're following. If there's no other questions, I'll hold out for a quick second if there's any other questions that anybody has. But I appreciate you guys, the follows and the likes. And please tap in the next time around. If you want to know, and if you're just joining in or you're just seeing this, I wanted to make sure that you book a free consultation call for yourself. That's one of the best things you can do to say, what is my next step, right? Go to fundingmyfuture.net, hit the link in my bio, or you can text me 240-240-642, right? You can text me and I'll send you the link to be able to say, okay, what is the next move with my credit? Like I said, do not feel bad if your credit is not great, because you might be closer than you think, right? And however much time it takes is going to be worth it by the time you get to the end of it, to say, like, not only is my credit better, a lot of things in my life are just going to be better in general because I have better credit, but I'm also open the doorway to be able to access 100,000, 150,000. And again, now that you know this blueprint that I just shared, now you can leverage that into income when it comes to referrals, or you can leverage that into credit partners. And speaking of credit partners, and when you start to think a little bit more out of the box, we say, okay, what if I grouped up with 5 people, right, that could leverage this strategy, and each of those 5 people under their own LLCs are able to get 100,000 each, right? So now we're talking about, now we got 500,000 collectively that we can leverage towards what? Towards a business purchase, or towards a multifamily, purchase, or towards some of these, some bigger things, so the possibilities start to open up significantly when you start to think about, okay, what are different ways that this can be leveraged, so when you think creatively and think a little out of the box, now this is even more access, to you, like specifically right now, that you can move forward. So again, I definitely appreciate it. Those of you that tapped in, stick around, and God willing, I'll be back to share more information. But feel free to DM me. Like I said, you can text me. So somebody just sent me a text right now, so I'll be responding to you right away. But take this information and run with it. And for the last time, I will say, tomorrow is not promised, you guys. And for those of you that are here at whatever time this is on Thanksgiving Eve, happy Thanksgiving to everybody. But you are pouring into yourself. This is why I appreciate the people that are here. You're pouring into yourself. You want to level up. You want financial freedom. You want impact. Like all those things, I think can be yours. It's just, you got to be willing to take advantage of information like this that you are exposed to, and say, well, okay, what can I do to use this to be able to fast track, into whatever my next step is, so I much love to you guys. Again, I encourage you to just keep on pushing forward, and the more of this type of information you get, the better it's going to be across the board, right? So thank you guys again. I am tapping out, and I'll see you guys next time around. Peace.